As I stood there, staring at the cold, empty seat beside me, the weight of her words, "It's just a birthday," crushed me. She'd forgotten who I was to this family. My son's first birthday, a day I'd imagined for months, had turned into a painful reminder of how far we'd fallen apart. But as I sat there in silence, something in me shifted. I realized that sometimes, stepping away is the only way to find yourself again. They thought I'd be desperate, begging for a seat at the table. But what they didn't know was that I had already walked away from the table, and I was stronger for it. Thank you for watching and following along with this journey. If this resonates with you, drop a 1 in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support means the world to me. Terry always started his mornings the same way, quiet, steady, predictable. At 41, routine was his anchor. He'd wake up before sunrise, grind fresh coffee beans, and lean against the kitchen counter while the scent filled the air. The house was too big for just him now, but he'd gotten used to the echo. Once, that same house had been full of noise. The shuffle of slippers on hardwood, the smell of pancakes, the sound of Leah singing off-key while feeding Jacob in his high chair. But now? Just the drip of the coffee maker and the faint creak of the old floorboards. Terry and Leah were in limbo. Not divorced, not really together. Technically married, emotionally separated. She had taken Jacob and moved in with her mother a few months back just for space. Terry hadn't pushed. He figured space could heal things if you gave it room to breathe. He'd always been the fixer, the guy who stayed calm, held it down, made things work. And even with Leah gone, he still texted every day, asked about Jacob, sent money, showed up when she let him. He wasn't perfect. But he was still trying. At least, until this morning. Terry reached for his phone out of habit, expecting another quiet morning scroll. Instead, there it was, a message from Leah. "Hey. Just a heads up, Mom's doing a small thing for Jacob's birthday this Saturday. We kept it tight, just family. Hope you understand." He stared at the screen. Read it once. Then again. Just family. The words punched harder than he'd ever expect from a text. He felt the mug in his hand tilt slightly. Hot coffee sloshed over his knuckles, but he didn't move. Jacob's first birthday. The milestone. The one he'd dreamed of since the day they brought him home from the hospital. He had planned to bake a cake. A dinosaur-themed one. Terrible, probably. But his. He imagined holding Jacob while everyone sang, whispering in his ear, "You're the best thing I've ever made." But Leah was saying he wasn't even invited. He wasn't family. His pulse quickened. The kitchen seemed colder now. Was this a mistake? A test? He typed, "Wait, what do you mean I'm not invited?" then deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Finally, he just stood there, still as the granite countertop, staring at those 3 words like they were a gunshot wound. Just family. He walked to the living room, phone still in hand, the message glowing like a bruise on the screen. For months, Terry had played the same scene in his head, Jacob's first birthday. A messy, chaotic little backyard party. He'd imagined stringing up paper streamers himself, probably crooked. A lopsided cake with frosting too thick, and Jacob smashing it with both hands while everyone laughed. He could see himself scooping his boy up, both of them covered in sugar and joy. It was supposed to be a memory, a loud, imperfect, real one. Even at night, when the house felt too quiet and the bed too big, Terry held on to that image. It kept him going. Gave him something to look forward to. A sign that maybe, just maybe, things weren't broken beyond repair. He'd even bought Jacob a little red jacket 3 weeks ago, knowing how chilly it might be. It was still hanging in the hallway closet, tags on, waiting. Now he wasn't even part of it. He sank into the couch slowly, still holding the phone like it might change if he stared long enough. The words didn't shift. No typo. No accidental send. It was clear, clinical. Just family. His thoughts tangled. Maybe Leah didn't mean it like that. Maybe her mom was planning something last minute. Maybe he was overthinking. But a heavy stillness set in. First came the confusion, quick, sharp. Then numbness, like a slow freeze inside his chest. And finally, the heartbreak. That familiar ache when you realize you're not just unwanted, you've been quietly replaced. His jaw clenched, and he felt something sting behind his eyes, but he refused to let it fall. Not yet. Not for this. Not for a woman who could cut him out of his son's first birthday like he was just the handyman who came by once a week. Not for just family. Terry hit the call button without thinking. It rang twice before Leah picked up. "Hey," she said, like she was answering a call from a coworker, not her husband. "Leah, what's going on?" His voice came out lower than he expected, tight with something he was trying hard to control. "What do you mean?" she asked, still casual. "The text," he said. "Jacob's birthday. You're saying I'm not invited?" There was a pause, too long. Then a sigh. That sigh. The one she used when he forgot to take out the trash or asked the wrong question at the wrong time. "Terry," she said gently, almost like he was the one overreacting, "it's not that big of a deal. It's just a birthday. Just a birthday." He closed his eyes. "It's his first birthday, Leah. I'm his father. I know, and you'll see him another day. We just wanted to keep it small. Low drama. Mom's hosting, and she thought it'd be better this way." "This way," he repeated. "What way is that exactly, me not being there?" Leah's voice turned harder. "Look, you've made things tense lately, Terry. You know that. And it's my mom's house." She wanted it intimate, just family. The word hit him again. Just family. "I am family," he said quietly. "I'm his goddamn father." Silence. Then she exhaled through her nose, like this was all too exhausting to explain. "I'm not doing this with you, Terry. It's just one day. Don't make it into something it's not." She hung up before he could say another word. He stared at the screen, the call ended banner glaring back. Then, without hesitation, he tapped Helen's number. She answered in 2 rings, her voice all sugar. "Terry, hello. What's this about?" He got straight to the point. "Why wasn't I invited to my son's birthday?" Helen's tone shifted, but not toward concern. It went icy, controlled. "Well," she said lightly, "this is more of a maternal side thing. It's not personal, of course. We just wanted to keep it simple." "Simple? You don't see how cutting a father out of his own child's birthday might be." "I don't know, the opposite of simple?" Helen let out a tight little laugh. "Oh, Terry. Don't be so dramatic. It's one day. You'll have your time. This isn't about you. But it's about Jacob. And I'm his." "It's done," she interrupted sharply. "Let's not drag this out. Please respect the boundary." He felt his face flush with a mix of humiliation and rage. "Boundary?" he asked. "You mean the line you're drawing around my son?" But she'd already hung up. For a moment, he just stood there. Then slowly, he lowered the phone. The silence in the house felt louder than ever. They weren't just shutting him out. They were redefining family without him in it. He sat back down on the edge of the couch, phone still in hand, the screen now black but somehow still burning. The words from both Leah and Helen echoed in his mind, twisted up like wires. Just a birthday, keep it simple, not personal, respect the boundary. Terry had always considered himself level-headed. The kind of guy who tried to see both sides, keep peace, not jump to conclusions. But this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate. Calculated. And the worst part? They acted like he was the one being unreasonable. He replayed every moment of the last year, midnight bottle feedings, diaper explosions, rocking Jacob to sleep in the worn-out glider in the nursery. The giggles, the first unsteady steps he caught on video, the soft weight of his son's head against his chest. Did none of that count? Or had Leah quietly decided, somewhere along the way, that she could just write him out? He tried to convince himself that maybe it was about logistics. Maybe space at the party was limited. Maybe Helen just didn't want tension in her house. Maybe. But every maybe felt thinner than the last. Because deep down, he knew what this was. They weren't just drawing a line around him. They were starting to rewrite the story, without him in it. He rubbed a hand over his face, jaw clenched so tight it ached. Am I even his father anymore? The thought came sharp and sudden, and it scared him how natural it felt. Like a truth that had already started settling in without his permission. He'd always believed being a father meant showing up. Loving hard. Staying steady. But what if no one cared that he was steady? What if, in the eyes of the people holding the pen, he was already gone? He sat there for a long while, eyes unfocused, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. Eventually, needing to distract himself from the ache hollowing out his chest, Terry opened his laptop. Maybe, he thought, looking at old photos of Jacob would remind him who he was in all this, Jacob's dad, no matter what Leah or Helen said. The desktop flickered to life, and with a few clicks, he was inside the shared cloud account Leah had set up after Jacob was born. She probably forgot he still had access. He hadn't opened it in months. The screen filled with thumbnails, Jacob swaddled at the hospital, first bath, first smile, first trip to the park. Terry clicked through them slowly, a faint smile tugging at his lips, but it never reached his eyes. Then he noticed a folder near the top. One he didn't recognize. Maui, May. He paused. They'd never gone to Maui. Not together. His heart started beating a little faster. The folder's preview image showed a beach, bright sun, clear water. He hesitated for a second, then double-clicked. Photos loaded instantly. The first one showed Leah. Smiling. In a bikini he'd never seen before. Terry leaned closer. Jacob was in her arms, squinting against the sun. And standing next to her, one arm casually draped over her shoulders, was a man. Tanned. Shirtless. Familiar. Terry blinked. It was Darren, the guy from Leah's office. The same guy she once swore was just a work friend. He stared at the photo, heartbeat thudding in his ears, brain trying to make sense of what his eyes had already understood. They'd gone on a trip. A family trip. Without him. And no one ever intended to tell him. His eyes dropped to the corner of the photo. The timestamp read May 12th, 2.5 weeks ago. That was the weekend Leah had told him she was on a client retreat in Atlanta. She even sent him a blurry picture of a hotel conference room with coffee cups and name tags. He remembered it because he'd offered to keep Jacob overnight, but she said it'd be too disruptive. Mom's got him. Just a quick work thing, she'd texted. But here was Jacob, on a beach in Maui. Not with his dad, but with Leah and Darren. Wearing matching sunglasses. Like a family. Terry clicked again. Another photo. Darren holding Jacob. Another, Leah and Darren kissing on a balcony at sunset. Jacob asleep in a stroller beside them. He felt something inside him lurch, like the floor had dropped out. They weren't just seeing each other. They were a unit. A new family. One that didn't include him. The betrayal wasn't loud. It didn't come with screaming or slammed doors. It was quiet. Precise. Like a scalpel. She'd lied to his face, smiled through it, and replaced him before he even knew he was being let go. And somehow, she'd made him feel like he was the problem. He shut the laptop slowly, as if trying to contain the images inside. His chest felt tight, ribs pressing him like they were trying to protect his heart, even though the damage was already done. For a moment, all he could do was sit there, staring into space, his hands trembling in his lap. Then came the heat. Not tears. Not yet. Just a pulse of rage that started in his gut and spread like fire. Rage at her. At Darren. At Helen. At himself, for not seeing it. He stood up too fast, dizzy, breath caught halfway. The air felt thin. He wasn't angry because she cheated. He was angry because she made him feel crazy for suspecting anything. And now she was throwing a birthday party with the man she lied about. With his son. And didn't even have the decency to invite him. He didn't remember sitting back down. Only that the next thing he knew, he was hunched over the kitchen table, laptop open again, this time on a travel site. His fingers moved before his brain could catch up, clicking through flights like he was flipping a switch he couldn't turn off. He wasn't running. Not exactly. He just couldn't stay. Not in this house, where the echo of Jacob's laugh still clung to the corners. Not surrounded by memories that now felt like lies stitched into drywall. Not after everything. He typed in a destination without really thinking, Sedona, Arizona. It was the place people went when they needed to disappear, desert, red rock, clean air. Somewhere he could breathe without the walls closing in. A direct flight left in the morning. Cabin available for the weekend. He didn't blink at the price. He clicked book now like it was the only option left. Then he stood, grabbed a pen and tore a sheet from the notepad on the fridge. He wrote just one line. If I'm not invited, I'm unavailable. No accusations. No begging. Just the truth, plain and cold. He folded the note, left it on the kitchen counter, and went to pack. Duffel bag, jeans, a few flannels. His hiking boots, a phone charger, the sketchbook he hadn't touched in months. No pictures. No keepsakes. This wasn't about leaving everything behind. It was about leaving them behind. As he zipped the bag shut, the house seemed to exhale. No cries. No noise. Just him, finally doing something for himself. Tomorrow, he'd be gone. Not hiding. Not chasing. Just gone. The rental car curved around a bend in the road, and suddenly the landscape opened wide, red rock formations jutting up against a pale blue sky, as if the earth had cracked open and left beauty in its wake. Terry rolled the window down. The desert air hit his face, dry and crisp, carrying with it a silence he didn't know he'd been starving for. The cabin came into view just past a row of juniper trees. Tucked against the foot of a cliff, it was dark wood and stone, simple, sturdy. There were no balloons. No cake. No voices calling his name. Just a wraparound porch, a stack of firewood, and a stillness that settled deep in his bones. He parked, turned off the ignition, and just sat there for a moment, watching the sunlight slide across the gravel driveway. This place didn't ask anything of him. No one here needed an explanation. No one here expected him to smile through the hurt. He stepped out of the car, boots crunching on the gravel, and took a long breath. The wind moved gently through the trees, brushing past him like a quiet nod. Welcome or not, he was here. And he wasn't looking back. Inside, the cabin was already warm. A fire had been lit before his arrival, the flames crackling softly in the hearth. He dropped his duffel by the door and stood still. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, the silence wasn't suffocating. It felt like space. Like a pause in the noise. He didn't check his phone. He didn't want to know what Leah had posted, what Helen had said, or what spin they'd crafted to justify cutting him out. Instead, he made coffee. Poured it black. Sat down on the porch with nothing but the horizon in front of him and the wind at his back. No messages. No alarms. No crying. No lying. Just wind, wood, fire, and breath. He didn't know what tomorrow held. But in that moment, he was whole. Not because of who was with him. But because of who wasn't. Later that night, after the fire had died down and the stars had taken over the sky, Terry sat cross-legged on the floor, back against the couch, the last of his coffee gone cold on the table beside him. The weight of everything he'd been holding finally caught up. It wasn't loud, or dramatic. No yelling. No fists through walls. Just him, breathing slow and heavy, eyes burning, chest tight with something that didn't have a name anymore. His shoulders shook, not from rage this time, but from the quiet unraveling of a man who'd spent too long pretending it didn't hurt. The ache wasn't just about Leah. It was the way they'd all acted like he didn't matter. Like he was a replaceable part, an optional presence in his own son's story. His breath hitched, and a single tear rolled down his cheek before he wiped it away with the back of his hand, annoyed at himself for letting it fall. But as the silence wrapped around him, something else came with it. A strange kind of clarity. They'd made their choices. And now, he was making his. He stood slowly, walked to the dining table, and unzipped his duffel. Pulled out the old leather sketchbook he hadn't opened in nearly a year. He flipped past blank pages until he found one that felt right. Outside, the wind hummed through the canyon. Inside, his pencil moved with purpose. He drew a mountain, rough and sharp, lines jagged like his breath had been. Then, beneath it, he wrote. June 18th, Jacob's birthday. He sat back and stared at the page. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about this was. But it was his mark. A quiet vow. They could throw all the parties they wanted. He'd be the one Jacob found when the noise was gone. The next afternoon, just as the sun dipped low behind the red cliffs and shadows stretched long across the porch, Terry's phone lit up on the windowsill. He'd left it there the entire day, face down, untouched. But something made him check this time. Taylor. His cousin. The one person in his family who still called just to check in. No sides. No politics. Just Taylor. He answered with a quiet, "Hey." There was a pause, then a sharp laugh on the other end. "Oh, you are gonna love this," she said. Terry sat down slowly. What happened? The party. Leah's big just family thing? Total train wreck. He didn't say anything, just listened. So it starts off okay, Taylor continued, clearly trying to hold in more laughter. Balloons, snacks, Jacob in that little blue hat. He looked adorable, by the way. But then Helen, your favorite person, gets up to give this speech, right? Terry closed his eyes, bracing. She starts talking about stability and family loyalty and, get this, how some people just aren't meant to be involved in a child's life long term. Right to everyone's face. Terry's jaw clenched. She said that? Oh yeah. Loud enough that even the cake flinched. And then, guess who walks in late? A beat. Darren. Of course. Not just Darren, Taylor added, grinning through the phone. Darren and some girl, Tara. You remember her? Leah's old roommate. The one she used to call a thirsty snake. Terry blinked. He brought Tara to the party? Like it was a date. Leah turned purple. Kylie started shouting at Darren. Helen tried to keep it together, but someone knocked over the cake in the chaos, chocolate frosting everywhere. Jacob started crying, and people started leaving in waves. Taylor sighed between her laughs. I mean, it was biblical, dude. Terry didn't laugh. Not right away. But slowly, something uncoiled in his chest. Not joy. Not even satisfaction. Just release. The kind of feeling that comes when life starts showing its hand, and you realize you were never the fool. You were just the one who walked away first. Taylor's voice dropped to a whisper, like she was letting him in on a secret no one else was supposed to know. Leah lost it, Terry. Not just a glare or a cold shoulder, full meltdown. I've never seen her like that. She stormed off to the kitchen and didn't come back out for 15 minutes. Terry leaned back in his chair, letting the wooden slats press into his spine. The desert breeze was still warm on his face, but he felt something colder creeping inside. She cornered Darren, Taylor went on. Started whisper yelling at him. You know the kind, smiling through her teeth, voice shaking. And he didn't even care. Didn't flinch. Just shrugged and walked off with Tara. Terry didn't say anything. He didn't need to. It made sense now. Leah had built something with Darren, sure, but it had crumbled just as quickly. The man she'd tried to build a new life with showed up to her son's first birthday already moving on. She had tried to replace Terry with a man who never planned on staying. And he was watching it all fall apart from 1,000 miles away. Then Helen, Taylor said, scoffing, "Oh man," she tried to salvage it with some god-awful toast. Starts rambling about the strength of a mother's bond and how some roles can't be shared by everyone. Basically shaded you right there in front of the fruit tray. Terry closed his eyes. He could practically hear her voice. But then, Taylor continued, Jacob started crying. Loud. Wouldn't stop. The room just kind of fell apart after that. The balloons popped, the cake was ruined, guests made excuses, and by 5 o'clock, half the family had cleared out. Terry didn't smile. Not fully. But something inside him settled. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't bitter. He'd simply been pushed out of a story they couldn't even hold together without him. As Taylor kept talking, he let her words fade to the background. His eyes drifted toward the sketchbook still open on the table beside him, the mountain he'd drawn the night before. This wasn't triumph. It was clarity. And it was enough. The call with Taylor ended just as the sun dipped behind the rocks. Terry stood to go inside when his phone buzzed again, another notification. This time, a voice message. Melanie. Leah's sister. He hesitated. She hadn't reached out in months. Not since the separation. They were never close, but she'd always been polite. Neutral. He tapped play. Her voice came through shaky, low. Terry, hey. I know I probably shouldn't be calling. Look, I didn't know how bad things had gotten until today. I saw Leah at the party, and she's not okay. But that's not why I'm calling. A pause. Her breath hitched. You need to know the truth. This wasn't about keeping the party small. Leah and Mom, they planned this months ago. Terry froze. They wanted to cut you out. Legally. Not just the party. The custody stuff, they've been meeting with a lawyer. Trying to build a case that you're unstable, distracted, not involved enough. Darren was supposed to be the new stable presence. The party? It was about positioning, photos, family, this whole image. The message ended abruptly. Terry didn't move. Didn't blink. They weren't just excluding him. They were erasing him. Every moment played back in his head like a reel he'd refused to watch before. The missed calls Leah didn't return. Helen's backhanded comments. Darren showing up at pediatric appointments Leah swore were rescheduled last minute. And the time Leah came home late, claiming her phone had died while she was with coworkers. He remembered noticing her perfume was different. The way she avoided his eyes when she undressed in the dark. He hadn't wanted to believe it then. Because believing it meant facing a truth that would break something he wasn't ready to let go of. But now? The truth was standing on his front porch, staring him dead in the eye. They'd been building a case to replace him. And they almost pulled it off. Terry set the phone down on the kitchen counter, slowly, like it might explode. His fingers hovered over it for a second longer before he turned away. He didn't need to hear the message again. Every word had landed like a punch to the chest, and now they echoed in the hollow of his ribcage. They planned to erase me. This wasn't some heat-of-the-moment exclusion or a misunderstanding over party space. This was months in the making. Photos. Court narratives. Legal maneuvering. They'd scripted him out of Jacob's life before he even knew there was a plot. And the worst part? They smiled to his face while they did it. Helen with her fake concern. Leah pretending things might still work out if he just gave her time. Meanwhile, Darren was being groomed as the new dad in a story Terry had bled for. The room swam a little. He grabbed the edge of the counter, knuckles white. He wasn't sure what to feel first. The disgust came easy, sharp and clean. It curled in his stomach like something rotten had been sitting there all along. Then came the grief. Not loud, not theatrical. Just heavy. Quiet. It settled over his shoulders like a soaked coat, dragging him down inch by inch. He walked to the couch, sank into it slowly, and let the silence press in. He pictured Jacob's face, soft cheeks, gummy smile. His little hand wrapped around Terry's finger the first time they met. That memory used to bring joy. Now it brought something else. Fear. What if Jacob grew up thinking Darren was the one who rocked him to sleep? What if Helen filled his head with stories where Terry was just a shadow on the edge of old photos? He buried his face in his hands. For the first time since this all began, Terry let the tears fall. He didn't fight them. Didn't tell himself to toughen up. Because this wasn't weakness. It was mourning. Mourning the version of fatherhood he thought he'd get to keep. But somewhere between the tears, a slow, steady breath pushed through. They thought they could erase him. But he was still here. And he wasn't going anywhere. He stood up, wiped his face with the back of his hand, and walked toward the table where his phone still sat like a loaded weapon. No more hoping for apologies. No more waiting for someone to do the right thing. He opened the contact list and tapped Leah's name. Block. Helen. Block. Kylie. Block. Each tap felt like cutting a rope that had been slowly strangling him. Darren? He didn't even hesitate. Block. Even Melanie. He didn't want to, not really, she had tried, finally, but the fact that she waited this long to say anything still stung. Block. The screen went quiet. Not muted. Not silenced. Gone. It was the most peace he'd felt in months. No buzzing. No performative texts. No guilt-drenched half-lies from people who'd already decided he didn't belong. He set the phone down like it had served its purpose, then turned toward the porch. The desert outside hadn't changed. The same red cliffs. The same endless stretch of sky. But he had. He sank onto the step, elbows on his knees, and stared out into the silence. What made someone a father? It wasn't just the title. Dad was more than biology, more than a name scribbled on a birth certificate or the occasional weekend visit. It was showing up. It was wiping noses at 3 a.m. and memorizing the sound of your kids breathing. It was loving someone so fiercely, you'd carry the weight of being forgotten just to make sure they were okay. They could throw his name around in court. Twist it, frame it, strip it bare. But they couldn't erase what Jacob already had in him, the sound of his laugh when Terry chased him around the living room. The way he reached for his father's hand without thinking. No judge, no toast, no replacement could take that away. The next morning, Terry pulled on his boots and stepped off the porch, letting the cold desert air hit his lungs like a slap. The sky was endless, streaked with early light, and the trail just beyond the cabin stretched out like it had been waiting for him. He didn't bring music. No podcast. Just the sound of his footsteps on red dust and the slow rhythm of his breath. The path twisted through junipers and sunlit stone. Each step peeled something off his chest, anger, shame, that sickening guilt they tried to pin on him. With every mile, he felt more like himself. Not the broken version they had labeled difficult or unstable. Just Terry. A man who loved his son. A man who'd been betrayed, but not beaten. At the top of the ridge, he sat on a flat rock, the entire canyon stretching wide below him. Wind tugged gently at his sleeves. There was no reception, no noise, no interruptions. Just stillness. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Back at the cabin, before leaving, he'd written a letter. For Jacob. He unfolded it carefully, smoothing the creases. If you ever wonder where I went, why I wasn't there in certain photos, just know. I never left you. I was pushed. But I never stopped being your dad. And I never stopped loving you. I chose peace over permission. And I did it so one day, I could come back to you whole. Love, always. Dad. He read it once. Then folded it and slid it back inside his coat, over his heart. That night, after the fire had died down, he poured a glass of bourbon and sat on the porch again, legs stretched out, stars bright above. He took a slow sip, the burn curling in his chest. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the dark horizon. "I hope they remember what they did," he whispered into the wind. "I hope one day, it catches up with them." Then quieter, steadier. "You buried me, but I rose." The words didn't echo. They landed. Solid. And for the first time in a long time, they felt true. The house was exactly as he left it, keys on the counter, duffel still by the door, blinds half drawn in the living room. But somehow, it felt smaller now. Less like a place he lived in and more like a snapshot of the man who used to. Terry stepped inside and closed the door behind him with a quiet click. The silence was immediate, heavy, but this time, it didn't press down. It just was. Familiar. Still. He stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to the hum of the fridge, the creak of old floorboards beneath his boots. No text messages. No missed calls. Not a single voicemail. Just like he wanted. He walked into the living room, setting his coat on the arm of the couch, and that's when he saw it. Right there on the coffee table, untouched since the last time Jacob visited. The half-finished Lego tower. Red, yellow, and blue bricks stacked unevenly, tilting slightly to one side like it had waited for his son to return and finish what he started. Terry knelt down beside it, running his fingers along the rough plastic edges. He could still hear Jacob's giggle, the way he'd clap when the tower collapsed and start again without hesitation. He reached over, found a single red brick on the floor, and gently clicked it into place. It wasn't perfect. But it was something. And it was his. He sat there for a while, staring at the red block now perched on top of the wobbly Lego tower. Just one brick, but it changed the shape. It gave it height. A kind of direction. Terry leaned back, resting his elbows on his knees. That red piece wasn't about toys. It wasn't about Jacob's game. It was about him. He'd been knocked down. Replaced. Forgotten. But here he was, still building. Quietly. Without applause. Without permission. It wasn't a grand gesture. No fireworks. Just a simple, silent choice to keep going. To be present in the smallest way, even when pushed to the edge. That brick was a promise. One he fully intended to keep. He stood up slowly and moved to the desk in the corner, flipping open his laptop. The screen flickered to life, casting a pale glow on his face. He opened a fresh document and began typing. Not for court. Not yet. For Jacob. A timeline. Dates. Messages. Photos. Every moment that proved who he was and where he'd been, when others tried to erase him. He wasn't here to destroy Leah or Darren. He wasn't out for blood. But he'd be damned if he let his son grow up believing a version of the truth that left his real father out of the frame. He typed until his fingers cramped. Then saved the file under one word. Legacy. Because that's what this was now. Not revenge. Not even justice. Just truth, handed down, one brick at a time. Jacob's laugh echoed in Terry's memory as he shut the laptop. That high-pitched, full-belly sound, the kind of joy that only lived in children who hadn't yet learned what betrayal felt like. He could hear it clearly, as if Jacob were still right there, hiding behind the couch with a toy truck clutched in his tiny hands. That sound haunted him more than Leah's lies ever could. Because what if one day, Jacob stopped laughing like that? What if he looked around and didn't remember the man who used to make him laugh that way? That fear, quiet but sharp, settled deep in Terry's chest. But he made himself a promise then, the kind you don't say out loud because they're too sacred. As long as Jacob remembered how to laugh like that, I'd find my way back to him. He didn't need to force it. Didn't need to crash through doors that were already locked. He just needed to be steady enough to still be standing when his son came looking. For a long time, Terry had measured fatherhood by presence, being there for meals, bath time, every scraped knee and bedtime story. But now, sitting in the dim light of his living room, he saw it differently. Fatherhood wasn't just about showing up. It was about leaving something behind that mattered. It was about the blueprint you gave your child, how to treat people, how to recover from pain, how to tell the truth even when it hurt. They could take away the party invites. They could rewrite court papers and blur timelines. But they couldn't touch what Jacob carried in his blood, the love that built him from day one. Terry opened his sketchbook again. On the last page, he wrote in small, steady handwriting. I didn't walk away. I made space. So when you're ready, there'll be room to come home to. Then he closed the book and set it on the shelf where Jacob's little fingers could reach it one day. Not if. When. Have you ever been made to feel like a stranger in your own family? Not just pushed away, but quietly replaced, rewritten, erased? What did you do when they drew the line and left you on the outside looking in? Did you stay silent? Did you scream into the void? Or did you choose the harder path, the one where you walk away, not to quit, but to protect your sanity, your identity, your truth? Because sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. It's self-respect. So let me ask you again. When they crossed the line, what did you do? Terry didn't miss a birthday party. He was written out of a role he'd never stopped showing up for. With no warning, no explanation, no grace. They tried to turn fatherhood into a title. Into a photo op. A position to be reassigned. But Terry knew better. Being a father isn't something that can be handed off like a set of keys. It's in your bones. It's in your quiet sacrifices. It's in the nights you don't sleep because your child is sick. In the mornings you rise anyway, because they need you. They thought he'd break. They expected him to beg. To show up, hat in hand, and ask for what was already his. But he didn't. He chose something else. Peace. He chose the desert over their noise. He chose a quiet cabin and the truth over a staged photo and a fake smile. He chose to stand up, not in anger, but in clarity. Because they can take away the invitations. They can manipulate the paperwork. They can even smear your name in rooms you're no longer welcome in. But what they can't do, what they will never do, is erase the love you planted. The kind that grows when no one's watching. Terry didn't fight for attention. He fought for space. For clarity. For a legacy that didn't depend on their approval. And that sketchbook? That tower of red, yellow, and blue bricks? That was more than memory. That was foundation. He didn't scream to be heard. He whispered a vow into the wind. You buried me, but I rose. He lost a family. But in losing them, he uncovered something even stronger. Himself. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing a man can do isn't force his way back in. It's walk forward without bitterness, so his child will know where to find him when they're ready. Terry wasn't the absence in Jacob's story. He was the anchor. And one day, when the noise clears and the truth floats back to the surface, Jacob will know exactly where to look. And he'll find him. Still standing. Still building. Still dad.